In today's video, we're going to take a look ahead at the Stanley Cup playoffs. Who will make it? Who will win in the playoffs? Who will ultimately win the Stanley Cup? So I'm going to give you another late season prediction coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned today, we're going to have a little bit of fun and we're going to do some NHL playoff predictions. Now, of course, as later in the year, there's some spots that are looking like fairly secure, but there's certainly some interesting playoff races going on, especially when it comes to the last few spots in the Eastern Conference. The wildcard race is certainly interesting, to say the least. Number of teams are really lumped tightly together in the standings. And in the Western Conference, there's a lot of spots that are not overly secure. We could see a lot of potential movement in the standings as we see them today. So I'm going to give you my thoughts on where I think the things will end standing-wise. Then we'll go around and I'm going to tell you who I think will win and ultimately give you my Stanley Cup prediction as of today. Now, this is being recorded on Sunday. It's likely not going up on YouTube probably till Monday or so. So the standings might be just a little bit different, but either way, not going to change a whole heck of a lot. So let's start here in the Eastern Conference. So first up, right now, the top three spots in the Atlantic are Boston, Toronto, and Tampa. I don't think there's really any danger of those three spots changing. Now, we have seen the Tampa Bay Lightning lately play, well, to be honest, really bad. They've had a bad stretch of the last 3-4 weeks or so. We saw them get whooped by Carolina 6-0 today. We also seen Victor Hedman get hurt, which is not going to bode well. Now, we saw in the game before that where John Cooper had to bench his arguably three of his top stars with Stamkos, Kucherov, and Point not seeing a shift in the third period. They've got some issues there. There's no doubt. I do have some legit concerns about them. And, I don't think they're going to be at risk to miss the playoffs. So things would have to go really bad, even worse than they are now. But I think that they're certainly in a high danger of not having any playoff success if things don't change and quick. So in the Boston Bruins, in Tampa Bay Lightning, Toronto Maple Leafs, there's not much of a race there. The Bruins have a big lead. The Lightning again sucking. The Leafs are in the middle. I think that's going to stay exactly the way it is. And the Bruins will be first place. The Leafs will be in second place. The Lightning will be in third. Obviously, that's going to send us up a first-round matchup of Toronto against Tampa. And then, of course, we'll have the Bruins play one of the wild cards. Now, in the Metropolitan Division, right now, you have the top three teams, as I record this, as being Carolina, New Jersey, and the Rangers. I do agree that those three teams are going to still be the top three teams. I'm not sure that the order is going to remain exactly the same. I do see the Carolina Hurricanes going on to finish in first place, though, and be your division winner for the Metropolitan Division. The Devils and Rangers will be in a 2-3 spot, but I do think there's a real strong possibility we might see a change in the standings. But that's far from a given. The Devils certainly, I think, have fared a little bit better with the additions they've made. The Rangers have made some great additions too. I think it's going to be extremely tight, to be completely honest. I don't see there being much of a standings difference at all, point-wise, win percentage-wise by the end of the year. I will say Carolina, New Jersey, New York Rangers, 1, 2, and 3 in the Metropolitan Division. Now, right now, if you take a look at the wild card race, you're going to see obviously the Pittsburgh Penguins and the New York Islanders in those spots. But the Islanders have played way more games than most of the teams around them. Then you got teams like the Buffalo Sabres and the Ottawa Senators are climbing on their heels. They're currently tied, just sitting a few points out. And then on top of that, you've got the Florida Panthers kind of nipping there as well. Detroit was in that group, and they kind of still are. There's only, not much of a difference there, only a couple of points. But at the same time, you do have a case of Detroit selling off a bunch of players at the deadline. I'm not sure they're going to really be keeping up with that pack in the next 10, 12, 15 games as the season gets closer to the end. I think as the season goes along here, the Red Wings will slowly kind of just creep back a little bit, whereas the Sabres and Senators and to a degree Florida seem to be further better positioned to kind of push ahead and make a race out of it at the end of our wild card race for the end of the regular season. So the Islanders and the Penguins are sitting in those spots right now. To be completely honest, I think the team that's in the most danger are those two. The falling out is by far the Islanders. They've got more games played than anybody else, so they don't have as much of a runway to make up for those points. So clearly that's an issue. The other thing, of course, between the two teams is the Penguins do have a longer, history of being a team that knows how to find a way and come together with those veteran guys, with Crosby, Malcolm, Letang, and the rest of them there that are certainly fully capable of having a lot of success. So I think Pittsburgh's odds of getting in as one of those wild card spots, probably wild card 1, likely very good. Islanders, I don't like their odds, unfortunately. Now, could they get in? It could happen, but they're going to have to play, to me, even better than what we've seen out of Buffalo and Ottawa here as of late. They continue to find ways to win. The Sens, as I record this, are on a 5-game winning streak, going to play the next game against the Chicago Blackhawks, one of the lower-ranked teams in the league. That could easily hit 6. And then from there, of course, they're going to continue a road trip. They go into Chicago to kick off a road trip that spans over 10 days. I believe it's like 5 games. They do have some tough games on that schedule, but in that road trip, I think we'll have a better idea just how strong the Sens are going to be. But we've seen them pick up Jacob Chikrin, as well as all the other things they did in the offseason. And that team's, certainly the best we've seen in a long time. Buffalo's the same way. They're really come together. So to me, I think the Sabres and the Sens play right at the end of the year. Like Ottawa's last game is against Buffalo. I could see that game maybe even being important enough that if they both kind of knock the Islanders out, that game could be for the wild card spot. And, that could come right down to it. So I'm going to predict right now, out of the teams that are fighting for it, I think Ottawa will grab wild card 2 and get in. The way they're playing right now, it just seems like a very, very likely scenario. If you look at a lot of the betting sites, they seem to concur and agree with that as well. They've given the Senators as close to a 30% chance of making it, and I think you even have like a 14% chance of going to the second round, which I know isn't overly high, but if you look back about 6 weeks ago, those numbers were almost non-existent. They were pretty close to 0. So they've come a long way. So that sets up your first round matchups. If that all comes to be of Boston against Ottawa, Toronto against Tampa, Carolina would play Pittsburgh, and the Devils would play the Rangers. So in those 4 series, I don't know as much as it would be great for Ottawa to get into all that work, but then they have to fight and the league's top team in the Bruins. Might be a match that they're just in tough for. But at the same time, the Sens are one of the very few teams this year that beat the Bruins twice in regulation. Now, of course, that was early in the season too, so we'll see how this goes. I think it could actually be a very intriguing matchup. As much as Boston has steamrolled the bulk of the league and has really dominated statistically, if you look at just how good they've been, it's hard to imagine them losing to anybody in the first round. But to be honest, I think Ottawa might be one of the best matchups and best opponents. Just how those two teams play. They played 3 times so far in this regular season. They will play again before it's over. Ottawa's beaten them twice. The other game was only a 3-1 game. It was pretty close. So it could be very interesting. But I think ultimately the Bruins and the experience would come out on top, and they would go to round 2. Ottawa would gain a lot of valuable playoff experience for their youngsters. They've got their meaningful games, and they could really build on that. But could they get into past the Bruins? I'm not so sure. I'm not ready to make that prediction, at least not today. Toronto and Tampa, like I said, I have a lot of concerns over Tampa. They've played like crap lately. They've been a team running out of gas. Their top stars have played so much hockey in the last 2 to 3 years. Is it really that time when they're finally going to regress here? We'll have to wait and see. Wouldn't be shocking if they get their act together either and give Toronto a good test. Last year with 7 games, Leafs had a good lead in the series. Tampa came back on them. Can they do it again? I have my doubts. Toronto has made a ton of additions. They're well suited here for playoff hockey compared to how they've been the last 5 or 6 years. They're better situated now than they ever have been. And then you got a Lightning team that's also in the process of really regressing here in the past month. So to me, things are lining up for the Leafs to finally get a round of victory. And I think this is going to be the year. So I'll predict right now Toronto over Tampa in round 1. Carolina would obviously play Pittsburgh. I honestly don't think the Penguins are going to be well situated to beat most of these teams that are in our playoff series, to be completely honest. Carolina has a lot going for them. One of the league's top teams. They certainly have a lot to like there. And I think Carolina would take Pittsburgh out. Obviously, the Devils and Rangers would be a very interesting series, something we haven't seen in a long time. An old rivalry renewed, that's for sure. We have the Rangers really loading up here with Tarasenko and Patrick Kane coming in. And of course, other moves, they've made some other depth moves as well. The Devils picked up Timo Meier, scored 9 minutes into his first game in New Jersey. If you break that series down, the Rangers are going to have an edge in goal. I think Igor Shesterkin's one of the best goalies in the league. He showed that last year in the playoffs as well. they're going to have an edge there. Blue line-wise, the Devils have a good blue line. I don't know that it's as good as the Rangers. For group-wise, you throw in Tarasenko and Kane in there. As the Devils are going to be, they're not going to be a pushover by any means, but I just think you got all that experience. I have to pick the Rangers to win. I just don't know that New Jersey could pull that off. It would be a big step forward for them to make the playoffs. They've had an awesome regular season. But when it's all said and done, I would pick New York to win that series. That would leave, obviously, your 4 winners being Boston, Carolina, the New York Rangers, and the Toronto Maple Leafs. So obviously that sets up the Leafs against the Bruins. We know the Bruins have handled the Leafs quite handily in the past and the playoffs. And of course, then that gives us Carolina against the Rangers. Now, in that series, I would have to pick Boston to beat Toronto. I don't know that the Bruins are going to be losing to really anybody, to be honest. Like, they're such a strong team. I think they have an edge on goal. I think they would equally, probably have an edge on defense. And I think they would probably have an edge, when it comes to special teams. But at the same time, Toronto would not be a pushover. I think they'd be better positioned to handle the Bruins than they ever have been in the past. But at the end of the day, I think that Bruin experience and goaltending is going to be enough to get them past Toronto. It still could go a deep, long series. I think Toronto put up a good fight. I just don't know they would get any further than the second round based on the teams that they're playing against. So when it comes to Carolina against the Rangers, again, I think the Rangers are going to be the team to beat here in that division. Carolina's had an awesome regular season. Again, another strong team as well. But again, I think if you take a look at things, I think the Rangers are going to be the better offensive team and a better goaltending team. So to me, that screams victory. So I would have the Rangers against the Bruins in the conference final in the East. That to me would be one heck of a battle. We've seen them play just a few days back, and that was quite a contest. So to me, that's what I would predict. I think in that series, though, the Boston Bruins would come out on top, but I can see that going even 7 games right to the wire would be hard to take. But I think Boston's experience in the way that the Allmark is just on another level this year, I have to pick them. I think that right now it's hard to imagine anybody than the Bruins coming out of the Eastern Conference to play for the Stanley Cup. It's just like I said from the beginning of this season, it just had a gut feel. This feels like a team of destiny. With everything coming together. It's almost like that last dance feel with you saw with Michael Jordan, Chicago Bulls, with Bergeron coming back for a 1-year contract, Krejci coming back from Europe. It's just everything coming together for one last ride here with this group as it is. And we might see maybe a couple of those vets, maybe they don't come back if they win the Stanley Cup this year. Who knows? We'll see. But I predict the Bruins right now to win the East. And that's how it all would break down in the Western Conference. We're going to obviously see a lot of different changes there. Right now, I would say in the Central Division, the Dallas Stars would be the favorites to win the division. I think that would be one of the safer bets. I think we're going to see the Avalanche take a move up. I think the Wild are well positioned. The Jets are a team that's been struggling lately, but are still pretty good overall. So we're going to say Dallas is going to be first. I'm going to put Minnesota in second, Colorado in third to finish out the regular season. The Jets will then drop onto the top 3 into the wild card conversation. In the Pacific Division, it's also really tight as well. You've got a variety of teams kind of fighting through for first, second, and third place there. But I think right now we have Vegas with a slim margin lead, and then we go with Vegas to finish first in that division as well. We're going to put the Edmonton Oilers moving up and solidifying that second spot, with the Seattle Kraken going into third. Got the LA Kings, like Winnipeg, dropping back here a little bit, still being much in the conversation for the wildcard spots, which Winnipeg and LA are my 2 wildcard teams. So obviously, in that scenario, I have the LA Kings being wildcard 1, the Jets being wildcard 2. The other teams that are kind of in that mix, to me, just don't seem to be showing enough to want it right now, between like Calgary, Nashville. St. Louis is too far back now, like Vancouver's too far back. To me, those are your teams that are going to be your playoff team. So if you shake down those matchups, that gives you a case of the Dallas Stars will likely be your top team in the Western Conference. So you'd have Dallas against Winnipeg, Minnesota against Colorado for your Central Division matchups. The Vegas Golden Knights would then be the first place team in the Pacific, doing battle with the Los Angeles Kings, which will set up the Seattle Kraken, doing battle with the Edmonton Oilers. Now, Dallas, Winnipeg, I think will be a really tough matchup. You'd have a really solid goalie duel between Hellebuck and Ottinger. But of course, then you look at the rest of the teams and how they shake down. I think Dallas would have the edge. I think it could go 6-7 games. I would pick Dallas to beat the Jets, though. I just think that there's overall a little bit more to like when it comes to their overall game. and more consistent play. And to me, I think that that would be how things would go in that front. Minnesota, Colorado, I think the Wild, after having another solid regular season, will be in tough against a team that's going to get better as the season goes. As we finally get to the playoffs, they're going to hopefully be healthier than they've been and energized, and defending Cup champions. I think the Avalanche would take down the Wild. Even though Minnesota had a strong season, I think they'd be in tough here yet again. I would not be betting against Colorado. That's much as for certain. Minnesota certainly might have an edge when it comes to goaltending. They've had pretty good play at Gustafsson, who I would expect to get the start in Game 1 of the playoff series. But ultimately, that firepower coming from the Avalanche might just be a little bit too much for them to handle, and I think they could score their way out of some trouble there and end up taking victory. When it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights, of course, they do battle the Los Angeles Kings. I don't know if that would be a great matchup for LA. I think Vegas will be able to handle them. I think the way the Golden Knights are built, especially if they get Mark Stone back for the playoff run, I think that they'd be in a really good spot there. And Jonathan Quick, I think, will be interesting. I don't know if he'd be the starting goaltender to face the old team, but that would be one heck of a storyline. That's for certain. Of course, Logan Thompson might have something to say, depending on his health and availability as well. But Vegas, I think, would be the favorite here, and would definitely, I would be shocked if they lose that series. I would pick Vegas to win. And, of course, that leaves us with the Oilers and the Kraken. I think it's a bit of a mismatch, to be completely honest. I can see Edmonton steamrolling Seattle. Seattle is, obviously it would be new, first-time playoffs. It'd be great to get a lot of experience on that team, which would be nice to see. But one thing that the Kraken are not getting, high-level play on is the goaltending position. Oilers are just, a wagon when it comes to their offensive play. With McDavid, Draisaitl, and company, I think they would steamroll right through Seattle, to be completely honest, in the 7-game series, probably down to 4, maybe 5 games, and they would go on to round 2. So I'll set up a couple of matchups of Vegas against Edmonton and Colorado against Dallas. That would be some interesting series, to say the least. When it comes to Colorado against Dallas, I honestly think the Colorado Avalanche would be a team that would be pretty tough to beat. Like I said, they've been getting better and healthier as the season goes along. I would not want to run into them in the playoffs, not much for certain. They showed last year they figured out how to win. They get it all together. As much as Dallas is good, Jake Ottinger can only do so much. I think the Avalanche would be too much for Dallas, and they would go down in the second round. And the other matchup you'd have in Vegas, like I said, against Edmonton. And again, I think Vegas would be outmatched here. I think Edmonton is going to be well positioned for the playoffs after adding some stronger defensive play, like with the addition of Matthias Ekholm. Nick Bukestad up front will help as well, between his penalty kill, face-offs, and what he brings is to kind of to give a little bit more depth to the forward group. I honestly think that Edmonton would take down Vegas. Vegas is a lot of question marks. I think they'd be good enough to get into the playoffs in the first place. I think they'd be good enough to possibly win a round. I'm not really confident they can go a whole lot further. And now it's up the Avalanche against the Oilers again. We'd see the McDavid against McKinnon be a heck of a playoff series yet again. But I think this time we might see a different scenario, a different outcome. I think Edmonton would take down Colorado this time around. I think the Oilers are better positioned to do that. The Avalanche, like I said, as much as I've been talking about them getting better and healthier as the season goes along, at the same time, would that luck continue to go through all the way deep to the playoffs? It's probably unlikely. And combine that with the fact that you got a high-powered offensive force coming at you in McDavid and company, and they might be in top. I think it'll be an interesting, fun series. Might go deep, but I think the Oilers could prevail as well, setting up a Stanley Cup final of Edmonton against Boston, which I think would be rather interesting as well. We haven't seen that in a long, long time, but it has happened before. And of course, this time I would predict, though, that the Boston Bruins would be your 2023 Stanley Cup champions. I think Edmonton would give them a good go, but ultimately, like I said, the goaltending, the team defense, the special teams, I just think they are such a force this year. It's hard to imagine anybody other than the Bruins winning this year's Stanley Cup. I think the Oilers will give them a good run, along with the other teams that we've talked about here, and we'll see how things go. But like I said, the other thing with those matchups, if things went the way they were, Boston might have a real tough time in round 1. I think Ottawa will give them a run if they can get in there. They might be better suited than compared to a lot of teams, just the way the teams match up and how they play them this year. But a lot of times you look at regular season matchups, you go to the playoffs. Sometimes it leads you to the right conclusion. Other times it means absolutely nothing. So we'll have to wait and see where things go. But that's my predictions for today. Let me know what yours are down in the comments. We'll discuss further. Again, this is just for fun. We'll see if we'll look back later, see how accurate we are, and I'll probably do one more round of these, of course, before the playoffs actually begin, when we have a better idea, more firm idea what the matchups are, confirmed to be. So let me know your thoughts. We'll discuss them in the comments. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.